And that's what we as men should desire more than anything, to do the damn right thing every flipping time. Not every time we get a chance, but every time. And to do so in such a way that other men, our kids, our wives are looking at us and they're like, oh my gosh, he doesn't even have to say it, but I want that. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Unlocking Greatness. We are, I don't want to say trucking, that sounds so cheesy. We are just humming along in this series. I've been talking to a lot of really good buddies, some connections off of social media, and really the opportunity for you out there listening is, what do two guys sit down and talk about when they just start hitting on life? Could be business, marriage, family, so many things in between. And my guest today, good friend of mine, Pat Moore. Pat and I met through an industry connection. He works exclusively in the employee benefits and healthcare world. I serve some of that community. We got connected, started to build a friendship. And from there, just continued to build on that. We were able to retreat together last August. And anyway, so it's just been a great time. I'm pumped to have him today. He is a proud member of the United States military, which means to me that he deserves an additional level of honor, respect, and gratitude for his service to our country. He's too humble about that to take that on himself. But for now, what's up, Pat? How's it going, man?
What's up, brother? I appreciate you. Thank you for the intro. And yeah, the military thing, people hate to be thanked for their service because you feel like, grateful that I got the opportunity to do so, man.
Yeah, no, I get it, man. I get it. Okay, so I this just came to mind. I told you, like, there's no script. You didn't get a single note. I shared this with you for the first time when we were in Scottsdale together back in August, but I want to share the story because I think this not only to me demonstrates character in you, but also I think this is something that will launch us into a discussion that I think other guys need to pay attention to. So you may already know what I'm going to say now, but we were together at a conference. This must have been July 2022, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe 23, but I think it was 2022.
Let's try 22.
23?
I know what you're
22. Yep. Okay, so July 2022. We're in Austin, Texas together. We're at a conference. We had gone out to dinner, myself and another guy, hosted a bunch of some men and women to go to dinner just for connection's sake. And drinks were flowing. Everyone's having a good time. We leave, and it ends up, as we're all leaving, you and I and a mutual friend of ours, another guy, along with a woman that was also with us at the table, we all end up kind of leaving together, and we are walking back to our hotel. It was maybe a mile or two, and we get about halfway there, and it becomes very noticeable that this third guy that we're with, who we would later find out was in a tough spot in his marriage, is lingering back with this woman. It's getting kind of flirty. We can hear that. And I don't know, I was at a point where it was like, I need to say something already, but it's also kind of awkward and a little bit uncomfortable, and you don't know how to interject anyway. And so finally, it got to a point where I think we both at the same time kind of overheard that they were going back to a hotel together, which I think it was going to be his hotel. And that was the first time, Pat, that you and I had really spent any extended period of time together at dinner and then walking back after. And you said something so simple yet so profound that hit me and was just absolutely telling of who you are as a man. And you said, oh no, we are not going to let this happen. We've got to do something about this right now. And that proceeded to us trailing back, separating that. We ended up making sure he got back to his hotel by himself. I don't know where the hell she went. But it was a moment for me, Pat. And again, I know you're just such a humble guy. I think this is just part of who you are, but that is not something that many men, even if and we didn't know that he was in a troubled spot in his marriage. Actually, he's now divorced, which had nothing to do with that, but we didn't know that. Whether we would have known that or not, most guys don't speak up. They kind of just turn an eye. Like most guys probably would have just ignored the situation and walked back to their hotel and just quote unquote hoped nothing would have happened. And even like I said, I admitted like I'm usually the outspoken guy, and it was really uncomfortable for me for a second. I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to say? And I was ready, and then you did. So I guess maybe my question to start is, and again, I know you said like not a big deal, but what is it that leads you to, first of all, have a value like that? And then maybe secondly, right behind that, be willing to speak up in an otherwise awkward or uncomfortable situation when you see something like that?
Man, I don't know why. At the time, I did it just because it was the right thing to do. I guess that's really the only thought I put into it. And I had just met that guy at that time, and now we're good friends, right? So it's kind of funny looking back on that. But it's a little bit of the military thing, probably. It's a lot of bit of how I was raised. And generally it's how I try to live in general. I try to do the right thing, treat people how they would like to be treated. And if I was doing something stupid like that, I'd like a dude to slap me upside the head as well.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe then like you say that was how I was raised. Like what was that for you? Like, was that something that along with other things you got from your dad, your mom, just seeing them being married? What was that?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably I had a probably the one of the best examples of a dad that loved his wife and my mother like I never doubted that, right? And so like my dad would not even let a waitress call him sweetie, right? Like that would be something that put him over the edge, and he'd be like, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, I'm taken." Stuff like that, right? And so my upbringing in that regard probably didn't hurt it. And then also my mother was a very, very religious lady, like church every single Sunday. Every single morning I knew she was on her knees doing devotions. It was basically very, very much raised in a religious family. Um, and so it's like just kind of intuitively where I do things. But most importantly for him that night, man, I knew he was not doing something that he wanted to do. I knew it was the alcohol talking to him. And so
Yeah.
I knew I owed it to him to try to take care of him. And you guys knew him better than I did. So I felt I needed to include you guys in my thought process.
Yeah. I mean, I think what's super cool about what you said, even about being raised, and I'm sure you can probably recount certain moments when you had specific conversations with your dad, but I think one of the most important things that we overlook maybe is, we hear the statement like actions speak louder than words, and it's kind of been overused and abused and, whatever. But I think it's just amazing that you were able to witness your dad, like in a restaurant, with a waitress, saying that to him, but you were able to witness over and over again your dad living out what it meant to be a real man. And that is something that gets ingrained into you versus I think a lot of times at best we're raised by dads that tell us a lot of what to do, but they don't show us on a consistent basis. My dad, over and over again, told me he loved me at different times. I didn't feel it that often. And some of that was me growing up. And there were certain things that my dad did that, showed me that he loved me. But overall, my actions from my dad often more made me feel like he was not ever really proud of me. And so like that was because, and that was my dad's way, which is very interesting. That was my dad's way of trying to get me to live up to the expectation that not only he had for me, but that he knew I needed to have for myself. And so it was constant disappointment when I didn't get A's. It was constant disappointment when I didn't give it my all at work or in sport. And he had just a tough way of showing that.
Yeah. No, that's yeah, it's so often, and I got a lot of this out of your book, man, wounds. But like those wounds we have either from our mother or our father, or the pluses or the minuses, it affects us so much growing up. And I see it so much, even in myself. I know, like, my dad's not perfect by any means, right? There are things that piss me off about my dad, but that is one thing I give him all the kudos in the world for, is I knew he loved my mom, and I knew he would never do anything like that to her. And he told me about how awesome and blessed I was to have her as a mother. And so she was golden in my eye. And I think that is, as a guy, as a man, as a husband, that's our job. Our job is to let our family know the importance of the mother and the household. And so
Yeah.
it's huge.
That's so good, dude. So I mean, it kind of starts for you, but does start for you in the home, with your father and your mom, and helping to kind of shape who you were going to become as a man. And then what was the decision for you to get into the military? I should say to the Marines, because I know that we don't
Let's
want to
step it
like
up,
talk
bro.
about the wrong
Yeah.
area of the military.
Why would I do some weak shit? No, yeah, man, I completely on accident is what I would tell you. So, not in the plan. Like, I had no one in my family on either side that ever was in the military. So military service in my entire family, mother's side, father's side, that was not part of the game. It just wasn't. And, but always grew up very patriotic as a family, right? And I was a quote unquote kind of a dork. And not in like I got beat up stuff, but I was a good student, right? Like straight A's, good student. School was very easy for me. I was very bored by school. And so when you're 18 years old, your brain tells you a lot of different things. And my brain was like, I can't imagine the next 4 years of my life just going to college and doing more school. Like, there has to be more of a life than that. That was my brain. And so I wanted something that would challenge me, something that got me out of my shell. And I was working at Menards over the summer. And for those of you that don't know what Menards is, this is a Midwest thing. It's like Home Depot. It's like Lowe's, right? But it's the Midwest. And that was my summer job. And I had, it was a terrible job. I was just loading stuff, picking stuff up, moving it around. And no kidding, like I said, when you're 18 years old, you talk to yourself a lot. I think we're all better people when we're younger too, by the way. I feel like our intentions are pure. Like, I take myself back to my thought process there. But I was literally sitting there asking God, like, what am I supposed to do with my life? Like, I didn't know exactly how the college thing was going to plan out. My folks never made a whole lot of money, right? I didn't even understand how that was going to work out. And I'm like, what do I do? And it's kind of a crazy story. It's like a light shining from the rafters type of a story. I'm like this as an 18-year-old kid, and I look down and there's a United States Marine walking to me, and it's a recruiter. I don't know what this is at the time, but he comes up to me. He's like, "Son, I feel like you could do something more with your life." There's a gap in between there. I'll save the rest of the story, but that's kind of what happened. It was a what the hell just happened type of moment. Mind you, this is the summer of 2001.
Right before September 11th.
So I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps August 17th of 2001.
Oh my gosh. So tell me then, and again, I think this is great, because I think this is what shapes character. This is what shapes a man, is the decisions he does or doesn't make, and experiences along the way. And as I've heard parts of your story, and now obviously hearing more, it makes so much sense. But so you're in this place where you feel like this is just not the life for me. The traditional maybe trajectory that most people are on at this point in life, I'm just kind of not feeling it. You have this divine experience with a recruiter. You enlist within 2 weeks of you officially becoming a member of the Marines. Maybe 3 weeks, our country is attacked. And so what goes through your head?
It was, part of the recruiter process was taking that recruiter to in front of my very religious mother, who is all of 5'1" and 100 pounds, and he had to do a little sales job on her, right? And the sales job was, we haven't really been in a war in 20 years, and the Marine Corps is a great leadership development course at the time. Like, I think it was something like 80% of the Fortune 500 CEOs in the country were or from type of Marine Corps lineage. And she knew my goal was to get into college and study business and all that stuff. So he was good. He did a good job. He was a good sales guy. And but yeah, so that was part of it. And when that happened, I was sitting at college because I did one semester of college before I went to boot camp. And I just knew my life was different than what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting to me. When you just said right there, it used to be 80 something percent, of leaders of the Fortune 500, were ex-military, and it's interesting to me because so clearly, and not to fast forward all the way till present day, but we have so far gotten away from a lot of the pride of serving in the military, a lot of the pride of the military, a lot of the value associated with those in the military, going in there, coming out of there. And yet, what I really, one of the things I've been so excited about, now maybe two, is to see guys, a guy like Pete Hegseth, stepping into potential responsibility. Hopefully he gets approved in the Trump administration to help lead. And also, and maybe more excited than that, is to see Tulsi Gabbard get platformed in the way that she did. And it's like, we need to see people getting shit done. And we need to see a level of discipline and ownership and responsibility. And we've lost that for so long. And I think that, obviously not everybody goes into the military, but when it was such a more predominant thing in culture, both in just leadership and organization, but I think just generally speaking across the country, that culture rubbed off on others in the organizations, in the community, in the culture. And there's been just this huge devastating gap for so long. And it's starting to feel a little bit like some of that is coming back. Like, do you see that?
Yeah, and I think it has a lot to do with the OIF and OEF, veterans, right?
What's that?
That is the Iraqi and Afghanistan veterans, right? So most of the country doesn't know this, but we've been at war for 20 years, right? We just kind of left that whole thing. And that was not just a news clip for a lot of us, right? We spent our 20s in different places, right? And so that was me. Like that thing affected my life in a way that if you didn't join the military, it affected you. Like, you knew it was happening. It affects you, but you don't really know what's going on, right? You got to read a history book. You didn't get to create history. And so a lot of these people that you're talking about right now are those guys that they were overseas when I was, right? They were in Fallujah in 2004. They were, in the dirt dealing with Iraqi craziness, right? Like, that's what they were doing. And so they got to experience it, just like a lot of those CEOs that were in the Fortune 500. They were Vietnam vets. They were Korean vets. They had been there. It wasn't a history lesson to them.
So let me ask you something. I've actually never asked you this. So that would have meant you were a part of Enduring Freedom, right? Because that came first. Did you go out? Were you out for both?
Yeah. So my first deployment was in 2004. So September 2004, we landed in a place called Mahmudi, Iraq. It was just south of Baghdad. So if you have Baghdad here, and I'm sure this is going to get all messed up with videos, but Baghdad here, Fallujah would be out here. We were like right here.
Okay, kind of in the middle.
Yeah, and so it was.
And so that was Iraqi freedom then, right? Because that was a pretty quick flip.
Yes, and so a lot of it was kind of considered Enduring Freedom too. And then Operation Iraqi Freedom, Enduring Freedom, it was that's all a bunch of names, right? At the end of the day,
Got it.
it was Iraq and Afghanistan at the end of the day.
Okay. So let me ask you this. So you enter into the heat and hot of what would be in our generation the most devastating war we've ever fought. And now here we are, 23 years later from the beginning, I guess, just a little bit short of that. And so much has taken place. So much has been said. Everything from, and I would probably think you would agree that a lot of that was ill-directed, ill-advised war. Other parts of that, it was like pulling out of Afghanistan just last year. Seems like it's all meshed together now. Felt like we left and with a lot unresolved, and it was in many ways it kind of just went right back to the way it was, and so it kind of feels like it was all for naught in certain areas. And so as you reflect back on your service, and I know you just recently finished out, right? You're done now? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's right. So and that was just recent. So like, as you reflect back on the last 20 plus years of you being in the military and fighting war, like what is your feeling? Like, how do you see that?
That's a great question, man. What is my feelings on it? It's my feeling is war is a racket, my friend. That's what I feel. That's what I feel. And so it's back in, I think it was the late 20s. It's just before kind of the Great Depression. A retired sergeant major at the time, Smedley Butler, wrote a book talking about, the title of the book is War is a Racket. That is the title of the book, and everyone should read it. It's like a pamphlet more than a book, right? It's like one of your chapters. That's what it is. But it basically detailed how, like, this guy had spent his whole life, and what he realized, like, through the Banana War, through World War I, through all the stuff, he basically determined that he was essentially a corporate pawn. That's what his service was actually, and he made the book War is a Racket. And so after spending my career, I don't completely feel that way, but I understand it, is what I would say. And I think there's a lot of truth to it. And I think if you're a military guy, understanding that from a macro perspective is healthy, because you have to have a good dose of reality and then a good dose of patriotism, because it's still a needed thing. But you need to understand there are not always good things happening because of the things you're told to do, right? There are obviously politics out there that aren't always aligned with what you would want your service to mean. So that's kind of where it sits, and that's why I retired, brother. So I retired because that Afghanistan pullout, just I couldn't care anymore. At that time, I'm one of the more senior enlisted guys, believe it or not. When you are anywhere over 40 in the military, you might as well be a grandfather. That's kind of what it is. And so I was walking around as the old guy with a bunch of 20-year-old dudes. And, it's my job to, like, motivate them. It's my job to be able to tell them what we're doing is worth doing. And I didn't have that. So the way we pulled out of Afghanistan was tragic. The lack of accountability for all of that is tragic. And it just goes to show we wasted 20 years.
I know that, like, again, that's a probably a big macro response to the situation, because I know that in the midst of it, there was good that was done at times. It took me a long time to understand, and again, just from asking other people, but how horrible it was for all of our veterans to come back from Vietnam and to be treated the way that they were. And that was clearly probably a far worse situation than what you guys were put in terms of, like, being in a place that probably shouldn't have been in. And obviously that's probably the reason why JFK was assassinated. I mean, there's just, like, so much that goes into,
you broke it down. I love it.
Yeah, but I believe that. And yet, though, not a single one of those men deserved to be treated ill because they obeyed an order to go serve in the place that they were called to serve. And I feel like, very much, I feel very similar today. I am not anti-war. As a matter of fact, I am the first one to say, like, we have the most badass military in this entire world, and we should use that military to protect our borders and our true interests at all costs. But like you said, I think that it's hyper accelerated itself to become a special interest operation. I mean, we're seeing that with the way our military is being leveraged in Ukraine right now and other places. Anyway, so it's like, I can see both sides. I just think that one of the things that hurts me the most as an outsider looking in is that we look at those that served and we somehow look down on them, coupling them into the nastiness, the bureaucracy, the distorted ideology that the global military industrial complex is at this point in this country. It's just it's sickening to me, because again, it's like, you went and served your country, and it wasn't your decision as to where you went or what you did or how you did it. Like, you were obedient to those that you were serving under, and you were doing so with a true desire to protect our country that was attacked. And yet you get lumped in, people like, you guys get lumped into this whole thing. It's just, it's frustrating from the outside looking in. And I hate that the narrative still kind of litters out there, that all war is bad and all military is bad. And it's just, it's horrific to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I'm thankful, and maybe it's a little worse in Cali, but in the Midwest, I've always been, everyone is super respectful of veterans service, all the things. I never had to experience that the way the Vietnam guys did. I've heard their stories. It crushes my soul. Yeah, it's totally not. And so at least as from that perspective, I never had to experience that. People have always been extremely supportive, and, it forces me to blush a little bit sometimes because I don't like praise.
Yeah, I know you don't. So praising you some more. No, just kidding. So all of this is
white Irish skin, Ryan. Come on.
we're going to see it. Turn on the video so you can see him blush. So all of this is really just everything that we experience in life is shaping us for what's next, right? That I believe that's God's whole intent and purpose, is to carry us through, to lead us into all of these places, interact with all these people, all these experiences, to lead us into what's next. And so you now have an opportunity to apply what your dad taught you and showed you, and your mom as well, what the military taught you and showed you, both the good and the bad, the awful and ugly, and some of probably like the greatest moments of your life. And now you get to bring that into being a husband and a father and a leader in business. And so, like, how do you see yourself now, like, fighting for the things? Like, what's your perspective on how you fight for things now? Like, those things that are most important thing to you, the things that you value the most. Like, how do you do that now? And how do you think that is influenced by what you've experienced to this point?
Yeah, no, I mean, being a father and a husband, that is the number one job, right? You can be you can be the world's okayest brain. You should be a really good dad. That's number one. But yeah, I think it's shaped everything I've done. Like, it shaped how I treated college and school before then. It's treated, I was, like I told you, school was never a big deal for me, but I also didn't try very hard. Right. And so if I had the B+ in the honors class that was going to be an A anyways, I was like, same thing. Right. It is what it is. But no, the Marine Corps is like, no, you're going to get straight A's because you can, Pat. So that's how I treated it ever since. It's how I've done it ever since. It's like, if you can do it right, you should do it right. And that's kind of how I try to do all things. Right. And I try to look at other people's perspectives and treat them appropriately. So we talked about war's a racket. This healthcare thing's the biggest racket we got going in this country. It's way worse than war. There are more lobbyists in Washington D.C. for pharmaceuticals and healthcare and hospitals. So, like, that is way worse than the war lobbyist, right?
Yeah.
So the money there, I see it every day, and so I can't help but have the same type of perspective I have on the military industrial complex that I have as the healthcare complex, man.
Yeah. So how do you, before you would literally go to war, right? You would go fight a battle with weapons of destruction. You don't get that, you don't get that opportunity now. It's a different type of fight. Like, how do you fight today for the things that you deeply believe in? Like you are a part of, what is definitely, no, you're not a part of. You work in an industry that is connected to one of the, if not the most corrupt entities the only thing more corrupt than healthcare is the United States government itself, probably. And I'm just speaking generally. So how do you take that same fervor, that same heart to go fight like a man, in a world where you don't get to use a gun and you shouldn't, and you don't get to use fists?
Should though, dang it, right? No, I mean Excel
Let's be
spreadsheets.
careful. Let's be
Yeah,
careful.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe fists.
Excel
Maybe fists.
spreadsheets, the same thing as a 50 cal, right? It's the same thing. Yeah, man, it's kind of the same stuff. It's telling truth when truth needs to be told. It's doing the work of understanding all the things that are going on versus just the surface level stuff. So never just looking at someone and saying because I told you. Like in the Marine Corps, you would want your Marines to do something you tell them to do, not just because you said it, but because you knew it was right. And so that's the same way I treat my clients. Like if I'm telling them to do something, it's because, and it's not always the easiest thing, right? I don't always tell them to do the easiest thing, but I tell them it's right, and knowing why and being able to tell the story as to why it is correct. That's how you do it. So yeah, you don't get fists, you don't get guns, but you get Excel spreadsheets and the ability to tell a great story.
Do you find yourself, in places? I think we've talked about this before, but do you find yourself in places where you're having to draw lines and cut people off, or cut them out, as the result of them repetitively not doing the right thing?
Yeah, I literally I just experienced that. That's funny. I had a group that I was putting in for Florida. I do a lot of work with other advisors, right? I kind of get to be their smart guy in healthcare and step in and help other advisors because they don't do the things that I do. And he literally couldn't have said more wrong things in an open enrollment presentation. Like, he portrayed what we were doing 100% wrong. And afterwards I looked at him like, I'm like, dude, we can't implement this case. Like, you literally told them we were using this network and we're not. Like, we're not using, like he said everything wrong to the employees and we pulled the plug. We absolutely
Intentionally, he was saying the wrong thing.
That's
Maybe.
that's a big maybe. Yeah. We'll
Wow.
say that. It was, and I guess we can geek out, right? Like, you have enough people that deal in our world. So it literally was the difference between a First Health network and an Aetna network. And he tried to make it the same thing because they were owned by Aetna. He wanted to tell them it was the same thing. He's like, yeah, you had Aetna last year. It's going to work the same way it does this year. No differences. And I'm like, it's just not true, man. It's just not true.
Wow.
In fact, we don't want it to be the same way as it was last year.
Yeah, that's the whole point.
And so afterwards, I like the lady that was there on site to do the open enrollment meetings looked at me and like, the client's like not nice. They don't even appreciate that we're there. And I realized he pretty much did that presentation just so the client didn't give him a hard time, right? He didn't want the noise. We pulled the group, man. We decided not to do
Wow.
it. We said nope, the business isn't worth writing.
Whoa. And you were that far into it too. I mean, that's not like, you were considering whether or
Yeah,
not to start the process.
he had 15 groups with us, getting ready to quote, and we're done. We're done. The relationship's over.
You know what's so weird about this is, like, what a bookend to my opening story about you, because I started by saying that, I watched you before I knew you really, um, step into an awkward and uncomfortable situation because you saw a line being crossed, and you weren't an asshole about it, but you were just going to speak the truth. And what I hate when people say my truth versus your truth. There was just one right and wrong in that situation. And instead of looking the other way or glossing over it, or, maybe I'm just seeing this wrong. Like you made a choice, which is again, like what a real man does. And then here we are 35 minutes later in a discussion, and you're sharing on something completely different in business. And you say, you know, I'm kind of putting some words into your mouth here, but it's like, I could assume that maybe he just kind of made a mistake, and or he was kind of trying to just make it a little bit easier on the client so they didn't get too feathers ruffled over this change that was going to happen. And we'll make it out to be as seamless as possible, though there's going to be some challenges, but we'll work on that after the fact. And here you are again, same dude, years later, and you're like, nope, there's just a right way to tell the truth, and there's a wrong way to tell the truth, and it's not telling the truth. And there can be gray, but I'm not going to accept that. And I think, Pat, like, again, make you blush. This is why, to me, I admire guys like you. And actually, what I admire about you more, and nobody will get this off of this podcast at all, but you walk around so unassuming. You walk around, I've never, ever heard you, like when you said, or just about 3 minutes ago, when you said something about like, people work with us because we do things better or differently than others, whatever. I think that's the most I've ever heard you talk about you doing something good. Like you are just so humble about it. You're so chill about it. And yet you have the opportunity and you're not perfect. And I'll say that too, but like by way of your service to our country, your service to your wife and your kids. And I know your commitment level to your wife and your kids and the ways that you sacrificed other things to be there to coach and to support, the way that you serve in business. Like, you are, in my opinion, again, one of the best models for other men to look towards, because you're not trying to be a model to look towards. Like, it's easy to be like the look at me, right? We see those all over the place. Guys are like, just do what I did and you can be like me. And you never say that, which means to me, you are exactly as your father was to you. You were I'm just going to do the thing. And I'm going to hope and pray that other people catch on what I'm doing. That's what impresses me about you. That's why I have so much respect and deep, deep love for you. And that's why I think these discussions are so valuable, because whether or not somebody listening picked up on that thread all the way through or not, that's it. And that's what we as men should desire more than anything, to do the damn right thing every flipping time. Not every time we get a chance, but every time. And to do so in such a way that other men, our kids, our wives are looking at us and they're like, oh my gosh, he doesn't even have to say it, but I want that. So you
definitely got me blushing, Ryan. That's what you just did. Thank you.
But like that, not the blush part, but like, that's what we should be after. That's what it means to be a man, is to be the provider, to be the protector, to do the right thing and to not compromise. And I wish we could get it out there more.
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, again, you touched on this, but you got a group of guys in our industry together back in August, and it was an absolute incredible time, man. And it was cool because we didn't talk about our industry. Like, we literally just talked about like being good people and being men that stand for something, and understanding that at the end of it all, likely no one is going to remember anything we did in our corporate careers, but our kids and our wives will carry on our legacy and carry on how we taught them to grow up in perpetuity.
You just dropped the mic. That's the perfect way to land it, man. I appreciate you. I know that every single person that's going to listen to this is going to appreciate the same things that I heard in there. I think these are things to strive for in our life. I think that it's a great opportunity for us to reflect on what shaped us to this point, to recognize where we need to continue to learn and grow. I know that you're a learner. You're constantly looking to push yourself and grow, whether it's in community with other guys or just consuming, your own knowledge. And so I appreciate that, man. But above all, I appreciate you. I'm super grateful for your friendship and just for who you are in my life, because I need more men like you around so I can become better. So thanks, man.
Appreciate you, brother. This was fun. Thanks, man.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, friends, another episode in the books. Like, share, subscribe. I don't know, whatever they say, you should go do that. If you want to connect to one of us, you can find that information in the show notes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Talk to you guys soon.